and welcome to this course on cold calling. In this course, we're going to cover how to increase your sales by picking up the phone. This course is divided into 3 modules. Module 1 covers researching companies and decision makers. Module 2 teaches you some vital call scripting strategies. And Module 3 covers hiring or outsourcing for your cold calling operations. By the time this course is over, you'll know how to effectively use cold calling for your business. So without further ado, let's dive into the first module. Okay guys, welcome to Module 1. In this module, our expert will cover how to do preliminary research to find decision makers in your target company. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
All right, so the main thing we're looking for with cold calling is to have a decision maker on the phone, but specifically to know their name. The name is huge. The name in the first place is going to help you get past the gatekeeper, okay? It has a huge effect psychologically when you can actually say the person's name instead of just asking, hey, can I have whoever's in charge of, sales decisions or marketing decisions, right? And it also helps you build a little bit of rapport during that initial interaction once you finally get the person on the phone, if you already know their name. Now, for a lot of the smaller businesses, little mom and pop locations, you're going to be able to find their names relatively easily because they're right on their website, right? You can go to the About page on their website and it'll be a picture or a name. And it's much easier with smaller companies in many cases. Once you get a little bit bigger, or once you're dealing with, say, the more elusive companies, you're going to have to get into some databases or into some social networks. So your first go-to thing is probably LinkedIn. Everybody knows how to search LinkedIn. You can literally look for company names and look who's associated with them, do some advanced searches. However, if you want to go a step further, you can actually rely on software and services whose whole job is just to find you the names and sometimes even the specific unique contact information for the individuals in a company. Some of these things go really deep. They have the structure, the different levels of hierarchy within the company. They've got names, they've got pictures, they've got cell phone numbers and emails and all that good stuff. And one that we can have a look at first here is Sales Genie. Now, Sales Genie has a huge database, as you can see, 25 million plus businesses. And the thing about Sales Genie and software like that is going to be that they constantly verify and update their information, okay? Because a lot of databases back in the old days, positions change, right? And so you'd make a call and say, hey, is Bob there? And somebody would say, well, he hasn't worked here in 2 years, right? And so you want to use a good service that actually stays up to date. And they're constantly making calls even to make sure that they know who's in what positions and that their names and their data are updated. And just to give you a little inside peek, you can have a look inside of Sales Genie here. This is a local business in Topeka, and we can literally get the executive's name and their title, right? A phone number to reach them at, and then you've got a whole bunch of other contacts inside. So you've got a whole bunch of first names that you can throw out during the cold calling process, whether you're just doing your reconnaissance or whether you're trying to get through the gatekeeper. Josh, Ben, Ryan, Ashley over in sales, right? Ben's the site manager and the head of marketing. It's pretty useful stuff to have on hand. And again, you want to work with a software that gives you the most up-to-date information. And a lot of these, beyond just contact info, will give you a lot of other good stuff to know as well. As you can see here, you've even got the total number of employees and the local annual sales or location annual sales for this business. And that's pretty useful as well when you're combing through and seeing, how likely is a place to purchase what you have. If sales aren't big enough, or, maybe the employee or organization size is not what you're looking for, then just to avoid them altogether. But this is really the golden information here. Okay, names, titles, contact information, as well as first names of other high-ranking people in the company. That's going to help you a whole lot during the cold calling process. Some other ones that we can look at include Seamless.ai. Same basic idea, maybe a bigger database, and you can also import these directly into your CRM at the click of a button. Right here you've got emails, specifically, in some cases, it looks like personal emails that they might have, depending on what companies you're looking for, phone numbers and all that good stuff for the different executives and decision makers in companies. And it's pretty useful if you're using a CRM like Salesforce or whatever it is that you're using. If it integrates with this, you can import them directly into your CRM without having to just browse through their website here. And you or your cold callers can get to work on that information that you're compiling and importing. Another somewhat newer concept now is inbound lead generation based on people who come to your website. Even if they don't fill out a form or contact you or anything like that, they can figure out that with a tool like Leadfeeder here, they can figure out who visited your site, what company they work for, what they did on your site. So that's some pretty advanced analytical and tracking stuff. And it's pretty neat because you can figure out who's proactively interested in what you have to offer. And you can call them up and say, hey, I know you guys visited, or someone from your organization visited our website recently. We were just wondering if you were interested in what we have to offer, et cetera, et cetera. And it, automatically, you've already got a warm point, a point of reference, something that you can refer to that has happened that led you to call them. You know, at any instance, any point of reference that you can utilize to make a call a little bit warmer when you make it is beneficial. And this is an absolutely spectacular one if you've got companies visiting your site. Now, one other thing that a lot of people don't really think of is sort of rolling up your sleeves and doing some of the, intelligence gathering yourself. And you can actually just call reception. You can just call the company and you'll get the gatekeeper. But in this case, you don't have to worry about them doing any gatekeeping jobs because you're literally just asking some questions. Hey, so-and-so here. I'm curious, who's in charge of sales over there? Oh, who's in charge of accounting? Oh, who do I talk to about, human resources stuff? And you can get names. And if you're not having luck at reception, then you can ask to be, just call the company and ask, hey, can you patch me over to sales? I need to talk to sales real quick. Or I need to talk to accounting. Receptionists and even well-trained gatekeepers are usually trying to keep you away from the head honchos. They're not necessarily trying to keep you away from other departments. On a horizontal basis inside of their organization. That's not what they're trained to do. And so if you say, hey, I need to talk to somebody in sales or in accounting, they'll patch you over. It's just a game of hot potato. And suddenly you're talking to Dwight in sales, right? And you can do your intelligence gathering there. Hey, Dwight, I've got to talk about XYZ. Can you tell me who's in charge of making marketing decisions or buying decisions? Hey, who's the main decision maker? Okay, what's his name? What's his title? Right? And you can do the same thing in other departments like accounting. Nobody's going to defend accounting. Nobody's going to say, no, I can't pass you off to accounting or I can't give you accounting's number because it's not something that people are hardwired to think is a salesy thing. They're not worried about you calling accounting to make sales. So you can get through to accounting. And when you're in accounting, guess what? The people in accounting are not trained to be gatekeepers. They're not trained to be tight-lipped. So if you're talking to accounting, you can ask them, and they, perhaps more than anyone in the company, will know who decision makers are when it comes to financial decisions. And you can ask, hey, who's in charge of your HR decisions? Hey, who's in charge of things like leadership training? Who's the head honcho who would approve something like that? What's their name? Oh, what's their title? Oh, do you have a phone number for them? Oh, can you transfer me to them? Now, it might be a little bit less likely that they'll transfer you on the spot, but it's worth asking because guess what? They're going to be more likely to than a gatekeeper in many cases because, again, if you're working in accounting, if you're an accountant, you haven't been trained to screen calls. So it's a way to get through, and we'll talk about that. We'll reiterate that in the next lesson. But for now, I'm talking purely using this as an intelligence gathering tool, okay, to figure out the names of the people in the organization, okay? Just sort of go around, the carousel, for lack of a better term, and get as much information as you can from each person there, to build that database of intelligence that you have, the names of the people and the positions that they're in. And that'll come in handy when it comes time to actually make the cold calls. Now, once you make the cold calls, once you know who you're trying to get a hold of, what their name is, who you're talking to, what do you actually say to them, especially in those first opening seconds? That's what we're going to talk about in the next module.
Hey folks, welcome to Module 2. In this module, our expert will teach us some vital cold call scripting strategies. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
So before we even get to what you're going to say to the decision maker once you get them on the phone, we need to figure out what you're going to say to the gatekeeper. And there's several ways and several different philosophies when it comes to dealing with gatekeepers. Some people say engage them in conversations, flatter them, be really kind to them, and all that sort of stuff. And you should certainly be kind to anybody who you speak to. But time and time again, we've found that the more short and brief your lines are to the gatekeeper, the more effective you'll be. Specifically, if you use wording that keeps you in control, that closes off and decreases the chances of them asking reactionary questions, and kind of puts the pressure on and makes it feel like they have an obligation to get you to the decision maker, you're going to have much more success in those cases. And that's why this script, as simple, as quick, and maybe even curt, possibly borderline rude as it might seem, this is actually the best script we can recommend for getting through the gatekeeper. Literally say the name of the person that you're trying to reach, just their name, and then the words please and thanks. Bob Lance, please, thanks. Now they're going to say, may I ask who's calling? And you're going to say, it's Michael Scotch, thanks. Just say your name. That's it. Then they're going to ask, what's this in regard to? Or are they expecting you? Something along those lines. Your answer? Just let them know it's regarding Michael Scotch. Thanks. Sounds weird, sounds awkward, but it's been proven to work, and that person is very likely to forward you on to the person who you're asking for. Now, if you can't get through the gatekeeper for some reason, you can always go around them. Now, we talked about this method earlier for intelligence gathering, meaning asking people about who's the head of this department or that department, what's their name, etc., etc. This actually works very well for getting around the gatekeeper and getting to the decision makers as well. Now, the thing about people in the accounting and the sales departments, for example, as well as other departments, but those are the two big ones, is that they're not trained to be gatekeepers or to screen calls. So if you talk to them in a business-like manner, as though you're on a mission and you're just doing a routine call and you got to talk to so-and-so, and you know their first name. Hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Bob. Is Bob in? Hey, do you know the number for Bob's office? Hey, can you put me through to Bob Lance? There's a much higher percentage chance that they're going to put you through to Bob Lance or give you his direct number or something along those lines because they're not trained to screen calls. They could care less, and just like with receptionists in many cases, people who are in accounting and sales, they don't want to be bothered by you. So you become a hot potato and they just want to pass you on to the person you want to speak to so they don't have to deal with you. Okay? So that's another option. It's an alternative option to get through the gatekeeper, is to literally just go around them to get to who you're talking to. Now, once you do finally get the decision maker on the phone, there's a couple of approaches, okay? The traditional approach is fine if you have it really streamlined, really clean cut, and really optimized. And that's basically this. You're going to say, hi, Bob. Use their first name. Hi, Bob. Michael Scotch here. Don't ask how they're doing. Don't ask, is this a good time? Although there is a separate tactic that you can use that hinges on the phrase, is this a good time? But we're not using that right now because we don't want to introduce the opportunity for a no answer. We don't want to start no's. That's a behavioral pattern that begins. Once someone gives you one no, there can be a lot of no's after that. We don't want that. We want to maintain and optimize this conversation for positive answers. Okay? So, hi Bob, Michael Scotch here. I'm calling because I noticed your company is expanding quite a bit this year, or whatever the plausible, relatable reason is, okay? It needs to be something believable. Okay, yeah, you probably heard that we're expanding, or, X, Y, Z. So there's a reason you're calling, and then you're giving them a proposition. My company provides printing services at super discounted rates that can help you save a ton of money on your marketing campaigns. Okay, whatever your value proposition is, lay it out clearly, have it rehearsed, okay? Make sure it's a 1 or 2 line sentence that works really well. And then, is that something you'd be interested in discussing at some point in the future? Now, the importance of that question is that it's an easy yes. It's impossible. Well, it's not impossible, but it's very unlikely that they're going to say no. You gave them a very valuable proposition, and just because of the friendly way that you asked, they're going to feel bad about saying no. There's a very high chance that they're going to say yes. Who would say no to that? It's such an open-ended thing. You're not saying, hey, can I have a meeting with you tomorrow at 8? It's a very open-ended question. And you're probably going to get a yes. Now, once they give you a yes or a sure, then you say, what will work better for you, Wednesday or Thursday, or whatever day of the week you want to use. But the point here is you want to give them 2 choices to pick from. You don't want to say, can I call you on such and such day? You don't want to do that. You don't want to say, does next week work for you? You don't want to say that. Because guess what? They don't want to deal with you. They don't like you. They don't want to do business with you. Some of them might, if you did a really good job with your reason and your value proposition. But most of them, even if they really need what you're offering, and even if later on they would agree that it was a good thing that they did business with you, initially, the psychological situation that they're in is that they want you off the phone. So if you give them an opportunity to say no, if you ask a question that is either a yes or a no, there's a very good chance that they're going to say no. Okay, especially if it's specific. Up here with the, would you like to discuss that at some point in the future? That's so vague and nebulous and open-ended that it's hard to say no to that. But when you say, can I call you tomorrow or next week? The answer is yes or no, and you're risking a no, and it's just not a good idea. It's much better to give them a choice between 2 options, Wednesday or Thursday. Now, they might not pick one of those 2 options. More often than not, they will. But at least you're not giving them an opportunity for a direct no, right? Once you do have them agreeing to a specific day that might work, then the next question, same principle applies. Don't say, can I call you at 7? Say, does something in the AM work for you? Or would something in the afternoon be better? Or if you want to get specific, that's fine, but make sure it's specific with more than one option. I could call you around 9, or would something closer to, say, 2 or 3 in the afternoon be better? Okay, give options so that they can choose from, and it's harder for them to say no. Now, this works. If you do this traditional approach, we're going to talk about a more unorthodox one later, but if you do this in a streamlined, buttoned up, very well executed fashion like this, you're going to have people committing to appointments, okay? Which is the whole point of the cold call. You're not trying to close a sale here. You're trying to close a future discussion. You're trying to close on a sales call in the future. Okay. Now, there's another alternative to one of these sentences. Okay. And that is the, value proposition combined with the would you like to discuss in the future. And that is the hypothetical question approach. You want this to act as a hook. You want to get this out in the first 10 to 15 seconds of having them on the phone. And you want it to be something that it's impossible for them not to be interested in. Okay. So you take your value proposition and you state it as a question. A hypothetical question. So in this case, if I could get you super discounted printing services and save you 30 to 40% on your marketing campaigns, is that a discussion you'd be interested in having at some point in the future? Right? So we're using the open-ended, easy yes question at the end, but it's based on an if, a hypothetical if, in which you actually make a big, bold claim, something that really hooks them. You phrase your value proposition in that manner. And you can get some success that way as well. Now, here's a few tips that you can apply to those calls. The first one is to preface your appointment request with, I know you're busy. Okay? That's a very powerful thing you can do to disarm them, to make people put their guard down, is acknowledge that they don't want to be on a cold call right now. I've got things going on. I don't want to commit to things. I've got a million things on my desk here, right? That's what's going on in their mind. So if you preface your request for a meeting, for a talk, a discussion in the future with, hey, I know you're busy. I want to get off the phone as quickly as possible. I want to let you get back to what you're doing. Can we discuss this at some point in the future? Well, all you're doing is adding ammo there to the yes, to the possibility of a yes. All you're doing, because at that point, the way you phrased it, the way you framed it, not only is it an open-ended question, would you like to discuss this in the future sometime, but it's also introducing the motive of getting you off of the phone, of getting them off of this cold call with you so they can get back to what they're doing. So suddenly their escape from being on a cold call, an unwelcome cold call, is to say yes to the discussion question. So you've got to pay attention to the psychology here. So instead of just, is that something you're interested in discussing in the future? Hey, I know you're really busy. Is this something that you want to discuss at maybe sometime in the future, in the coming weeks? All right. And that really works. Don't use the word appointment. Okay, we call it appointment setting. That's the actual practice that we're doing, right? But you don't want to actually use the word appointment because there's too much negative stigma and connotation, subconscious, psychological negative stigma with that word. It sounds like more of a commitment than it actually is. People think of other things like dental appointments and so on and so forth. The word appointment, throughout the entire history of a human being's life, rarely means something good or enjoyable or fun. So let's not use that in the sales conversation when we're trying to get them to commit. Okay, discussion would be a phrase to use. You can use phrases like, I'd like to pencil in, some time on your calendar, or I'd like to, lock in a day next week, or, something along those lines. Try not to use the word appointment about these appointments. And then agree, don't argue. If they hit you with objections like, I don't have time, or we're already happy with what we've got, make sure that your response is phrased in a way in which you agree with them, which you acknowledge what they're saying. So, now we're really busy. We don't really have time. Oh, I totally understand. Yeah, of course you're really busy. Could we do this next week? How about the end of next week? Can I get 10 minutes with you then? We already have a provider who does XYZ service for us right now, and we're happy with them. Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm glad you're happy with them. They sound like a great company. But let me ask you this. If I could save you 30% on XYZ service, or if I could get you 20% better results than that company, is that a discussion that would be worth having for about 10 minutes? I'm not saying that that's going to be a winning line, but it's important that however you respond to objections, you want to try to do it in a way that sounds like you're agreeing at the beginning of your response. Don't get into an argument. Don't say yes, but. Okay, don't say, well, that company probably sucks. I can do better. Don't get cocky. Agree with everything that they're saying and then turn it into a re-attack. Now, there's something else we can discuss here before we get to the unorthodox approach, and that is a last-ditch attempt. If you can't quite get a meeting with someone, okay, whether it be a phone meeting or an in-person meeting, there's a tactic that you can utilize in which you're making a very low commitment, very benign request of being able to drop off some information. And the way that this is phrased, the concept of, hey, can I just drop off some information, similar to, hey, can I just send you an email? It's actually effective because the person sees that as their escape from the conversation. Oh, of course, yeah, send me some information. I'll have a look when I get some time. That's great. Now, 90% of the time, they may never look at the information, right? But in their mind, they see that as an escape, as a way to get out of this conversation and out of the commitment of setting an appointment, all without having to be rude or hurt your feelings. So it's a win-win. They love it, right? But on your end, you're not really interested in the packet of information. What you're interested in is manufacturing a situation where you do get an impromptu meeting with them. So as soon as they say yes to that question, hey, would it be all right if I drop off a packet of information you can just have a look at sometime at your leisure? As soon as they say yes, you take that yes, you grab it, and you leverage it. They say, yeah, sure, that'd be fine. You say, okay, and who can I drop that off with? Have you got a reception area outside your office? And they'll say yes. And you say, great. And just on the off chance you happen to be around, pay close attention here. Great. And just on the off chance you happen to be around when I drop it off, would it be all right if I call on you from the reception desk just to see if you've got a couple minutes? If not, no big deal, right? But just on the off chance you're around, would it be okay if I poke my head in and say hi? And this phrase, just so we can put a face to a name, that kind of thing. Now that's very effective as well. And this just all sounds so innocent. It all sounds so benign and non-threatening that they're going to say yes. Now, they might say yes reluctantly, but they don't really have a choice at that point because they've already said yes to you coming by to drop off the packet of information, right? So it might be a reluctant yes. It might be a conditional yes. Well, yeah, maybe, but I'm probably not going to be available. And that's fine. Just take that. Take that for what it's worth. And then you close off with, okay, and what time of day would you most likely be around? If I wanted to just say hi when I drop that off. I know there's no guarantees, you might not be available, but just out of curiosity, what time of day would you be most likely to be around? And they're not going to say, to heck with you, and hang up at this point. At this point, you've got them into a pattern of yeses. They're going to probably, now they might lie, but they're going to give you a time of day. that they're more likely to be around. And you take that and you run with it, and you drop off your packet of information. You say hi to the receptionist, and you say, by the way, is he around? Poke your head around a little bit. Bob said it was all right if I say hi to him when I drop this off. Is he around? That kind of thing. You leverage that, and it's a great last-ditch way to get an appointment, even if they're not willing to pencil one in on their calendar. Okay? Now, next, let's talk about the unorthodox approach that I mentioned earlier. Now, this one, it's iffy. It's pretty ballsy. And there's not a whole lot of data out there worldwide on how well it works. It was actually created by a guy, or at least it's championed and spread by a guy in the UK named Benjamin Dehenny. And he tells everybody about this method, and it makes sense why this would work, because of how novel and unprecedented it is. So instead of saying the traditional lines, you just come right up front, total transparency, and acknowledge that you're doing something that they don't want you to do, right? Something that's slightly annoying, with a little bit of humor, sort of a nudge kind of thing. Hi, Bob. I want to be up front with you. As soon as you get on the phone with him. Hey, Bob, I want to be up front with you. This is actually a sales call. Do you want to hang up on me now, or can I have 30 seconds to make a quick pitch, and then we can hang up if you're not interested? Most people have never heard that line before, and they will sometimes even tell you, wow, I've never heard that one before. You'll get people chuckling and, sort of giving you a pat on the back for saying something that actually got them to stay on the phone for, 30 seconds longer than they otherwise would have for other cold callers. Okay, now there's no guarantee this will work in your market. It's always good to split test these different approaches. But this one's pretty neat just because of the novelty. It's a pattern interrupt. It's not what they're used to hearing from a cold caller. And many times, just because of the novelty, or maybe sometimes because they feel a little bit sorry for you, they'll say, sure, you can have 30 seconds. Sometimes they'll say, something like, well, I'll give you 15, or something like that. But that's your chance to make your pitch. And hopefully your pitch, your value proposition, all that good stuff is well rehearsed, and you make it within about 30 seconds. And the key is, when you get to the end, hopefully you had a good hook, and what you've said has made them want to stay on the phone longer. But the key is, once you get to 30 seconds, you acknowledge that your time's up. Okay. And you ask for more. You say, hey, even if they're talking, if they're answering a question, like if your hook or your opening includes a question and they're answering it, you don't interrupt in a rude way, but at the first available moment, step in and say, hey, I just want to be honest. I want to keep myself honest here. I asked for 30 seconds and the time is up. Can I have another minute? We did just hit the 30-second mark. I appreciate you giving me that much time. Can I have another minute? And you just go from there. Okay. So, it's an interesting new development in the world of sales. And, I would say use it with caution, but don't be afraid to split test new concepts like this when you're doing cold calls. Okay. Now, all the stuff we talked about, it's probably scary to a lot of people. Some of you might find it exciting, and you're, excited to get out there and give it a try. But the question comes down to, do you want to do it yourself? Is this something that you actually want to do on the phone yourself? Or would you rather have a sales team or someone else do it for you? And we're going to talk about that option in the next module.
All right, welcome to Module 3. In this module, our expert will show us how to outsource or hire cold callers. So get ready to take some notes, and let's jump right in.
All right, so what if you don't want to do your cold calls and your appointment setting by yourself? If it's too intimidating, or you don't have time, or you planned all along to outsource this kind of thing to a sales team or to freelancers, there's a few different options for that. The first one is, as I said, freelancers. This is where you don't necessarily hire someone permanently onto your team, and you're not necessarily outsourcing it to a company or a service. You're just finding an individual who's good at a skill, and you're paying them on a project basis or sometimes on an ongoing monthly basis, but they're not really part of your company. They're not an employee or anything like that. Upwork is a tremendously useful way to find people like that. You can do word searches. We could use the word cold calling or appointment setter here, or you could come over here to all categories and just browse and try to find something in the phone sales space, such as lead generation freelancers. You might find some people there, or telemarketing and telesales. That's probably what we're going to look at here. And as you can see, you get a whole lot of people who have skills in cold calling and telemarketing, outbound sales, cold calling. So a whole lot of potential here. Let's try actually looking for appointment setting. All right, so here's our results for people who generate appointments for you on Upwork. Cold call expert Francine, B2B lead generation here, experienced telemarketer, quick and attentive. That's customer service. What you'll notice about Upwork is that it's kind of like LinkedIn. A lot of people end up with skills in their skills database, their list of skills that aren't really their primary thing. And so you've got to be careful with that when you're searching through. You really want to look for what's their main thing that they do. So Rebecca M. has two main things, customer service and appointment setting. So she might be, worth another look. And you browse through their profile. It's helpful if they have some past work experience here. And we don't see that there. Let's see if we can find some in her full profile. Nope, no work experience published. So let's go back here. Let's see if we can find someone with a little bit more of a background to look at. So Francine says she's a cold calling expert, and she's got 100% job success here, but she doesn't have a whole lot earned, which means that could literally be 1 out of 1 job was successful, right? We've got Daniel, B2B lead generation here. Pretty expensive, but he's earned a whole lot, and he's got a 99% success rate. Might be worth looking a little bit closer at him. Work history. Whole bunch of 5-star reviews there. And looks like we've got B2B outreach as something that he's done. Email outreach. Email copywriting. So that's not what we're looking for. B2B lead generation, very important. Many aspects to it. We really want someone who actually is skilled on the phone. So let's try Alicia here. Experienced telemarketer. Alicia has a 96% job success rate with a whole lot of jobs under her belt, or at least a whole lot of revenue. And we can look at that here. And she's just got a whole lot of successful jobs and a whole lot of positive feedback. She's got 1 3-star review a couple years ago. So since everything since then has been good, she might be someone who's worth reaching out to and trying to bring on board as a freelance cold caller. And looks like cold calling is definitely something that she does quite a bit of. Calling prospects, sales and telemarketing, scheduling demos for, looks like an e-com company. B2B appointment setter, 5 stars. So this is all good. This is someone who you might want to contact and invite them to apply for one of your jobs on Upwork. Okay. What we don't want to go with is someone who has a whole lot of negative history. Okay. This is just an issue of if there's a whole lot of things, it's kind of a if there's smoke, there's fire kind of thing, right? 1 3-star review like we saw in the previous person a couple years ago is probably not a big deal. But if you look here, and there's freelancer responses with excuses and explanations and so on, which for all we know might be valid, but you're not running a charity, you're running a business, and you can't take those kinds of chances. So I'll leave that up to you if you want to take a chance with someone with that kind of history. The next option is going to be Fiverr, and yes, you can actually recruit or pay for cold calling services on Fiverr. Now, Fiverr has kind of a stigma associated with it. They've slowly becoming a more premium platform these days. Of course, they started off where everything just costed a $5, so services were relatively cheap, and you get what you pay for. But it might be worth looking through these to see some of the rock stars, because there are rock stars on Fiverr who are really good at what they do, and they'll probably be a little bit more expensive. But you look at this guy, 4.7 stars out of 149 reviews, 4.9 here. I'll cold call your list. You've got a guy over here, 100% 5-star reviews for cold calling or using custom sales scripts, etc. to generate appointments. 273 reviews, all of them positive. Very similar over here with Maxine Coleman. So I mean, there's no shortage here of people who say that they can do a good job of cold calling and appointment setting, and many of them have the reviews and testimonials to back that up. And because it's cheap, it's less risky, to maybe give them a try and then see if they can sit through maybe the training in the previous module, right? And cold call some of those prospects for you so you don't have to. Another option is to bring on a permanent team member. And one of the great places to look for if you're on a budget, let's say you're an internet startup and you don't have a whole lot of money to bring on U.S. employees or additional U.S. employees for sales, a great place to look is onlinejobs.ph. Okay. And the reason I say onlinejobs.ph is because there's a very little known fact about the Philippines, and that is that they speak excellent English. They all speak tremendous English. Now, when I say all, I shouldn't say everyone has no accent. Okay, there's obviously some accents, but less so than any other country in the world, as far as we've seen. People in the Philippines, English is one of their primary languages, officially a primary language that they learn. And many of them might have sort of what your average American over the phone would think is a Hispanic or even a Southern California kind of twang when they talk. You can get a whole lot of people who have barely any accent at all, and their grammar is absolutely spectacular, and many of them are, in fact, good at cold calling. So you could do a search here for cold calling, and you'll find a whole bunch of people who have that skill. Telemarketer here. Cold caller there. Cold calling here. So cold calling is probably not the main thing that people find on onlinejobs.ph. Most people are looking for content creators, general virtual assistants. But if you dig, you'll find people who have telemarketing and cold calling experience. And in the case of hiring somebody from the Philippines, you would want to make sure that an audio interview, of course, or an audio recording sample, etc., is part of your interview process. But because cold calling is not one of their primary things, what you'd want to do on onlinejobs.ph is actually post a job. Okay, and then the people who have those skills that you're looking for will search for those skills, and they'll come to your job post and apply for the job. And it's a great place if you want to bring on a permanent cold caller on your team who you don't have to pay that much money to, because the buying power of the U.S. dollar goes very far in the Philippines, especially depending on what region of the Philippines you're talking about. So you could be paying somebody, $400 or $500 a month to do cold calling for you in the Philippines, and they're getting paid better than, the engineer and the college professor down the road from them, So it's a win-win situation. It provides some upward mobility for the folks in the Philippines, and it helps you save some money as well, whether it be hiring them as your only salesperson, your only cold caller, or using them to supplement your existing team. It's a tremendous thing to take advantage of. Then we have the actual services, okay? So instead of hiring a freelancer for projects, or instead of bringing on a, virtual remote worker as a permanent team member, say from the Philippines, like in the last example, there's actual services that handle this for you. So Jump Crew is one that exists, and you just basically pass it on to them. You pass on, the target audience, you pass on the sales scripts and stuff like that. And they take care of your appointment setting. They also do actual selling as well as another service, but what we're talking about is appointment setting, and this is a great way to sort of take that off of your shoulders and just hand it to somebody else as quickly as possible. Another option here is Overpass. Overpass will basically let you tap into an existing pool of people who literally are just cold callers. That's literally what they do. The entire site is optimized and based around being able to see their skills and performance as cold callers. And like it says, it's basically a pool of qualified appointment setters in the cloud that you can tap into. So that's another one to look into. And there's EBQ. is another example. There's tons of these out there, by the way. These are just 3 examples. EBQ is appointment setting services, specifically in the B2B space, where they handle all of it for you. They're going to take care of turning your prospects and your leads into appointments for you, and all you have to do is just give them the goods, give them the scripts, give them, the value proposition, all that good stuff. And you're basically taking all the stuff we've talked about in the previous 2 lessons, and you're taking it off of your shoulder, and you're taking it off of your shoulders and handing it to another company that might save you some money, depending on what you pay your sales team or what you would have paid a sales team. At a minimum, saves you some time and some heartache, especially if cold calling is something that is intimidating to you or stressful for you. So these are all very legitimate options for outsourcing the task of cold calling for your business.